What happens when a legendary group starts sounding like a memory? When the voices that once defined a generation struggle to be heard in a world chasing something shinier, faster, colder? By the early 1980s, the Temptations were no longer leading the charge. They were trying to catch up. The charts had moved on. So had the fans. And Motown's crown jewel was slipping into silence. They didn't just need a new lead singer. They needed a lifeline. And that lifeline came in the form of a soft-spoken powerhouse named Ali-Ollie Woodson, who didn't just revive the Temptations. He redefined them. The Temptations weren't just another Motown act. They were black royalty, a group that had once set the standard for harmony, precision, and passion. But by the 1980s, the world had changed its rhythm. The raw soul of the 60s had faded. The funk of the 70s was out of fashion. And the Temptations, after surviving the loss of voices like David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks, after pushing through the turbulence of Dennis Edwards' Fiery Rain, were no longer leading the sound. They were struggling to stay relevant in a world that had moved on. This is the story of Ali-Ollie Woodson, the man who didn't just save the Temptations. He became the last great voice to define them. He brought them back from the edge with elegance and strength. And when the curtain fell, he kept fighting long after the applause had stopped. To understand the man who would redefine the Temptations in the 1980s, you must first travel back to the two epicenters of Black American music that forged him. Ali-Ollie Woodson was born on September the 12th, 1951, not in the rural South, but in the heart of the industrial North, Detroit, Michigan. He was a child of the city that Berry Gordy was transforming into Hitsville, USA. The very air in Detroit hummed with the sound of rhythm and blues, with the assembly lines of the auto industry providing the percussive backdrop to a musical revolution. However, Woodson's story is not confined to one geography. During his formative years, his family relocated to Town Creek, Alabama, trading the concrete grid of Detroit for the rolling hills and fervent faith of the Deep South. It was here, in the pews of his local church, that the foundation of his musicality was laid. Long before he ever touched a synthesizer or stood in a professional recording studio, he was immersed in the raw, unfiltered power of gospel. He wasn't just listening to music, he was living it, breathing it, participating in the call and response that is the very bedrock of soul music. It was in the church choir that he learned that singing wasn't about technical perfection, but about testimony. It was about conveying a feeling so profound and so honest that it moved the spirits of everyone in the room. This education would prove to be the most important of his life. As a teenager, Woodson was a sponge, absorbing the dual influences of his surroundings. He possessed the earthy, heartfelt spirit of Southern gospel, but he also had the sophisticated urban swagger of Detroit R&B in his blood. He was a gifted instrumentalist, not just a singer, demonstrating a serious aptitude for the piano. He wasn't content to just be the voice. He wanted to be the entire engine. While still in high school, he was already a band leader, organizing his own vocal groups and combos, writing their songs, arranging their harmonies, and learning the crucial art of leadership from the ground up. This early experience distinguished him. He was developing a holistic understanding of music creation, seeing the entire puzzle, not just the single piece that was his voice. Upon graduating, Woodson chose the path of the true musical apprentice. He became a journeyman. This was his university, the grueling, unglamorous, and indispensable education of the touring musician. For over a decade, he honed his craft in the background, a secret weapon in the arsenals of more famous artists. He logged thousands of miles on the road and countless hours in the studio. building a reputation as a consummate professional. He became a trusted keyboardist for the Queen of Soul herself, Aretha Franklin, a position that required impeccable skill and the ability to stand tall musically in the presence of royalty. He also toured extensively with Bill Pinkney's Original Drifters, a group that was a direct link to the very origins of R&B and doo-wop. Night after night, he wasn't just performing, he was absorbing history. He learned the discipline of vocal harmony, the subtleties of stage presence, and the relentless work ethic required to survive decades in the music business. He played with funk outfits, he backed pop singers, he wrote, he arranged, he produced. He was a musical polymath, a jack of all trades who had quietly mastered them all. By the early 1980s, Ali-Ollie Woodson was one of the most seasoned and respected musicians you had probably never heard of. He was a craftsman waiting for his masterpiece, a voice waiting for the right song. Little did he know, an institution was on the verge of collapse, and he was about to be handed the blueprints to rebuild it. The Temptations of 1983 were a ship navigating treacherous waters. The glorious 1982 reunion tour, which had brought David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks back into the fold alongside the contemporary lineup, was a resounding success but a personal powder keg. The tour had ended, and with it, the brief truce. Ruffin and Kendricks were gone again. More critically, the group's powerful lead singer for most of the prior decade, the fiery Dennis Edwards, was also out for what would be the final time. The constant friction between Edwards' rebellious nature and Otis Williams' disciplined leadership had finally reached its breaking point. Otis Williams, the group's founder and unwavering anchor, found himself in a familiar but daunting position. He needed a new lead singer, but the stakes were higher than ever. The Temptations had just re-signed with Motown, a move orchestrated by Berry Gordy himself, who harbored a deep personal desire to see his beloved group reclaim their throne. The pressure from the label was immense. They weren't just looking for someone to sing My Girl on the weekend nostalgia circuit. They needed a charismatic contemporary voice who could deliver a hit, a real TU hit. The search began. The list of requirements was long. They needed a lead vocalist with power, range, and an undeniable soulfulness. But Otis, a shrewd survivor of the industry's changing tides, knew they needed more. In the producer-driven era of 80s R&B, they needed a creative force within the group. They needed a writer, an arranger, someone who could collaborate and help forge a new sonic identity. It was during this search that a name surfaced, Ali Woodson. He had a solid reputation among Detroit musicians as a multi-talented artist. Otis Williams made the call. Woodson was invited to audition, a moment freighted with the weight of nearly a quarter century of musical history. To walk into that room was to face the living embodiment of a legacy. It was to stand before Otis Williams and Melvin Franklin, the two remaining original members, and sing for a place in the Pantheon. The ghosts of the voices that had come before, Paul Williams' sweet baritone, Eddie Kendricks' ethereal falsetto, David Ruffin's desperate cry, Dennis Edwards' thunderous roar, were all silent witnesses. Woodson, armed with the quiet confidence of a man who had been preparing for this moment his entire life, delivered. He sang with a silk and steel smoothness that was entirely his own, but it was more than the voice. He spoke the language of music fluently. He could sit at the piano and articulate his ideas. He understood song structure, harmony, and production. Otis saw in him not just a replacement, but a partner. In 1984, Ali-Ollie Woodson officially became a Temptation. His initial role was to learn the vast back catalog and step into the lead vocal spot on the road. It was a trial by fire. performing iconic songs for audiences who knew every note, every ad-lib by heart. But behind the scenes, a more important collaboration was taking shape. Woodson and Otis Williams began to write together, spending hours in the studio searching for that elusive spark, that perfect blend of classic soul and contemporary flair that could conquer 1980s radio. They knew they were on the clock. The music world was not waiting for them. One day, Woodson presented a nearly complete idea to Otis. It was an anthem, a simple, elegant, and powerful statement of chivalry. It was a song that felt both timeless and perfectly attuned to the moment. The groove was infectious, the melody was unforgettable, and the message was universal. He called it, "Treat Her Like a Lady." "Treat Her Like a Lady" was not just a song, it was a defibrillator, sending a jolt of pure energy through the heart of the Temptations and shocking their career back to life. Released in early 1984, the track was an absolute phenomenon. From Woodson's commanding chanted intro, a call to arms for gentlemen everywhere, the song was a masterclass in pop soul construction. The production was crisp and modern, with a driving bass line and shimmering synthesizers. But the soul of the track was pure, classic Temptations. The harmonies were impeccable, a lush vocal bed over which Woodson's lead soared with effortless grace and power. This was Ali-Ollie Woodson's grand arrival. He wasn't just the singer, he was the co-architect. Having co-written and co-produced the track, his musical DNA was woven into its very fabric. The song stormed the charts. It hit number 2 on the Billboard R&B chart and became a major crossover success, climbing to number 48 on the Hot 100. More significantly, it was a massive international hit, especially in the United Kingdom, where it reached the top 20 and reintroduced the group to a whole new generation of fans. It was the Temptations' biggest, most impactful single in over a decade. The success was transformative. Overnight, they were no longer a legacy act trading on past glories. They were a current vital force in popular music. They were back on major radio playlists, their new video was on television, and their concerts were suddenly multi-generational events. At the center of this whirlwind was Ali-Ollie Woodson. His smooth charisma and powerful romantic voice were the face and sound of this incredible renaissance. He had a different fire than his predecessors. He wasn't the tortured poet like Ruffin or the raging prophet like Edwards. He was the suave, confident gentleman, the embodiment of the song he had created. He made the Temptations cool again. This success galvanized the group. Their 1984 album, Truly for You, was a cohesive, confident statement. Woodson's creative influence continued to grow. For their next album, Touch Me, in 1985, he once again took the helm on the lead single, the stunning ballad Lady Soul, which he also co-wrote. The song was another major R&B hit, a gorgeous tribute to the classic soul divas, and it proved that the success of Treat Her Like a Lady was no fluke. Woodson was a genuine hitmaker. However, just as his star was shining its brightest, his body delivered a devastating blow. In 1987, Woodson was diagnosed with squamous cell carcinoma of the throat. For any person, a cancer diagnosis is terrifying. For a singer, a cancer that attacks the very instrument of your art is a nightmare of unimaginable proportions. He was forced to make a terrible choice, his career or his life. He stepped away from the group he had just triumphantly resurrected to undergo surgery and treatment. In a surreal turn of events, his spot was temporarily filled by Dennis Edwards, the very man he had replaced, highlighting the strange revolving door nature of the group's history. The future was uncertain. Would he survive? And if he did, would he ever be able to sing again? But Ali-Ollie Woodson was a fighter. possessed of a quiet but formidable strength. He faced the brutal treatments with courage, and, against the odds, he won. The surgery was a success, and after a period of recovery and vocal rehabilitation, he discovered that his voice, though subtly altered, was still there. It was a miracle. And by 1988, he was back where he belonged, rejoining the Temptations. His return marked the beginning of his longest, most stable period with the group. For the next 9 years, he was the unquestioned lead voice and a key creative contributor. This era produced some of the group's most critically acclaimed later work, including the 1995 album For Lovers Only, a collection of lushly arranged standards that allowed Woodson to showcase the rich, mature texture of his voice. He also co-wrote another charting single, Soul to Soul, further cementing his legacy as not just a performer, but a foundational creative pillar of the group's modern identity. He had faced down his own mortality and returned not diminished, but with a new depth and appreciation for his gift. The inner workings of a multi-decade musical institution are like those of any long-term family, filled with love, loyalty, conflict, and change. After nearly 13 years of phenomenal success and profound personal trials, Ali-Ollie Woodson's journey with the Temptations came to a close in 1996. There was no single dramatic incident, no public firing. Instead, it was a gradual parting of the ways, a mutual decision that a chapter had ended. The relentless grind of touring, the pressures of maintaining the brand, and the natural evolution of personal and professional lives all played a part. For Woodson, leaving the group meant stepping out from under the giant shadow of a legendary name and trying to establish his own identity. He embarked on a solo career, pouring his experiences and talent into his own projects. He released a solo album fittingly titled Right Here All Along, a statement of artistic self-worth. The title seemed to say, "The talent you loved in that group, it was mine. It's still here." He toured internationally, performing a mix of his solo material and the Temptations hits he had made famous, his voice still a beacon of smooth soul. But as he navigated the challenges of a solo career, he was already engaged in a far more serious private struggle. The throat cancer he had conquered in the 80s was, tragically, just the opening battle in a much longer war. During the early 1990s, while still at the height of his second tenure with the Temptations, he had received another more devastating diagnosis: leukemia. It was a chronic, insidious cancer of the blood, and he was told it would be a lifelong battle. This began an extraordinary and little-known period of his life, a nearly 18-year odyssey of treatment, remission, and relapse. For almost 2 decades, Ali-Ollie Woodson lived with a terminal illness hanging over his head. He endured wave after wave of debilitating chemotherapy, radiation treatments that sapped his strength, and the constant psychological weight of knowing the cancer was always there, waiting. What is truly astounding is that he faced this grueling reality with an almost superhuman level of grace and professionalism. He kept his struggle intensely private. To the world and to many of his fans, he was still the vibrant, charismatic performer. He would fly to gigs, his body aching from treatments, and walk out on stage as if nothing was wrong. He would deliver passionate, energetic performances, his voice filling the theater, giving audiences the joyous experience they had paid for. Few, if any, knew the monumental effort it took just for him to be there. Colleagues from those years speak of his courage with a sense of awe. They tell stories of him being visibly weak backstage only to find a hidden reserve of strength the moment the spotlight hit him. It was a testament to his profound love for his craft. Music was not just his job, it was his sanctuary, his purpose, his medicine. Performing was an act of defiance against the disease that was trying to silence him. Each song was a victory, each round of applause, a confirmation that he was still alive, still fighting. In the rare moments he spoke about his health, it was with a deep and abiding faith. He refused to be defined by his diagnosis or to wallow in self-pity. He viewed his ongoing battle through a spiritual lens, crediting God for giving him the strength to persevere. He saw every day as a gift, every performance as an opportunity to share the joy that his illness could not extinguish. His fight was not loud or public. It was a quiet, dignified, and incredibly courageous marathon. This silent struggle, this 18-year war waged behind the curtain, is perhaps the most powerful and moving part of his entire life story. How do we measure the significance of a life like Ali-Ollie Woodson's? If we use the traditional metrics of the music industry, hit records, chart positions, sales figures, his legacy is secure. Treat Her Like a Lady is not merely a song. It is a permanent fixture in the soundtrack of our lives. It revived a legendary group, dominated the airwaves, and continues to bring joy to millions. It stands as one of the brightest jewels in the Temptations' already glittering crown. His other contributions, like Lady Soul and Soul to Soul, further underscore his creative importance. But to limit his significance to record sales is to miss the point entirely. Ali-Ollie Woodson's true impact lies in his role as a revivalist and a bridge. He arrived at a moment when the Temptations were at their most vulnerable, adrift in a sea of changing musical tastes. With his unique blend of classic soul sensibility and modern musical craftsmanship, he built a bridge that allowed them to cross safely into a new era. He didn't just help them survive the 80s, he made them thrive. He demonstrated that legacy and innovation are not mutually exclusive. He honored the group's sacred past while boldly writing its future. His story is also a deeply human one that offers profound lessons in resilience and grace. He showed the resilience to spend over a decade as a journeyman, patiently honing his craft out of the spotlight. He showed the resilience to step into one of the most high-pressure positions in music history and not just succeed, but excel beyond all expectations. And most importantly, he showed a resilience of the spirit that is simply awe-inspiring. To battle cancer for nearly 2 decades, to face down mortality every single day, and to continue to create and perform with joy and dignity is a measure of a man that no gold record can capture. When he finally succumbed to his long illness on May 30th, 2010, at the age of 58, the music world lost a truly special soul. The tributes from his peers were a testament to the man he was. Otis Williams remembered him as one of the most gifted and essential collaborators the group ever had. Aretha Franklin mourned the loss of a phenomenal talent. They weren't just remembering the hitmaker, they were remembering the quiet professional, the gentle spirit, the courageous fighter. In the grand, sprawling narrative of the Temptations, a story filled with iconic figures and dramatic turns, Ali-Ollie Woodson's chapter is one of quiet triumph and profound strength. He was not a founding member, nor was his tenure marked by the kind of public turmoil that defined some of his predecessors. Instead, he was the steady hand, the creative heart, and the golden voice that guided the institution through a storm and back into the light. He was the last of the legendary lead singers, the final voice to truly define an entire era of the group's music. He reminds us that sometimes the most important contributions are made not with a roar, but with a smooth, unshakable melody. His music brought joy. His life was a testament to courage, and his legacy is one of revival and resilience. Ali-Ollie Woodson was the gentleman who saved the kings, the journeyman who became a master, and the fighters who sang his song with grace until the very end. We're done for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, smash the like button, comment below, and hit subscribe for more great content coming your way soon.